trip to Europe and a round trip to Asia would have been over 20,000.
All
You know,
right.
so you just add an extra week or two and
Yeah.
keep going.
Call this meeting to order. Announcements and communications. My main communication, just thank you so much to Councilmember Woods. Thank you. Councilmember Woods and Mayor Pro Tem Bordeaux and everyone who helped on the Juneteenth committee. It was a wonderful event. There seemed like great turnout, wonderful vendors and artists and music and DJ and food
Line dancing.
and line dancing.
And I just want to thank everyone on the council and the mayor for our support and helping out, getting things set up, and all of our volunteers, which we had numerous volunteers this year, which made it so much easier. And it was a great event. And it waited to get really, really hot until after we got done.
Finished, thank goodness.
It was
yes.
hot enough, but.
And
really
the awesome new city tent
Mm-hmm.
that was out there for the
Oh,
event.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good job.
our tent looked great.
Another communication, there's just a reminder to everyone that there is an additional public hearing and our special called meeting for the adoption of the millage rate on Thursday evening, June 26th at 6 p.m. here. Yeah, and as we're going through all of this, we'll talk about some projects this evening. We've had a lot of public input, more than normal at our public hearings, meaning like 3 people came, so that's wonderful. Yeah, but just a reminder that as we're balancing, the short-term kind of visible things that we're seeing in Pine Lake, that part of what we're doing is, the long-term strategy for alleviating our increasing taxes. As we know, the price of everything is constantly going up. The city is no exception to that. So if we're really solving it in a long term, then our focus, needs to be on our economic diversification and our commercial corridor as part of that. So we're making strides toward that. Code enforcement is a piece of that puzzle. So yeah, that's my announcement. I hope to see some people at the public hearing. Great. Any other announcements or communications? Okay. Is there an adoption of the agenda for the day?
Before we adopt the agenda, I would like to move that we take out number 8 of the consent agenda, break it out for a quick discussion,
Okay.
and put it at the top of old business. So
Okay.
it's the first thing that we discuss.
Sounds good. Any other?
If we
Thoughts?
need to remove things from the consent agenda, is this the time to do that, or?
Yes.
Okay. I would
And-
like to remove R25, 2025-39, R2025-40, R2025-41, and that's it.
Okay. We can put those under old business after the ordinance, second read and adoption. All right, any other discussion? All right, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended with the consent agenda items moved?
I move that we adopt the agenda of the day as changed,
Okay.
as modified.
Second?
Amended? Seconded?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, is there a motion to adopt the minutes from the May 27th, June 10th, June 19th public hearings?
I move that we adopt the minutes from the May 27th, June 10th, June 19th, and June 19th public hearings.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay,
ahead.
Torrance seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, public comment? Here's looking at you, Calvin.
Calvin Burgamy, 4568 Dahlia Drive. My public comment is about citations. I got a nuisance citation 10 days ago, it was saying that I had to cut back from the power lines in the trees. I also think they may have confused part of my property with somebody else's property. And the citation wasn't signed, and it said, call this number if you have questions. I called the number, and I had questions and no response. So I would like at first I thought it was because there's been all this discussion about ordinances, but the ordinance listed was like an old ordinance. It didn't have the number that was discussed here in council. So I think if we're going to give out citations, there ought to be some response, and maybe the person who gives the citation could sign the citation so we know who did the citation. And yeah, because I think, our house isn't like the perfect lawn like anybody else's here, but I don't think it met any of those criteria that was listed in the citation, although I do think it was some confusion with a neighbor. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to proclamations. So this is a proclamation for National Police Week. Let me see if I can find it in this thick packet here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and read it. This is the City of Pine Lake Proclamation of National Police Week, which passed May 11th through 17th, 2025. So whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy signed a proclamation designating May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which it falls as National Police Week. And whereas National Police Week pays special recognition to those law enforcement officers who've lost their lives in the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. And whereas law enforcement officers, both past and present, serve our communities with courage, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. And whereas the members of the Pine Lake Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of our residents and visitors, often placing themselves in harm's way to protect the public. And whereas it's fitting and proper that we express our heartfelt appreciation for the sacrifices made by these dedicated officers, including those who have given their lives in the line of duty. And whereas the City of Pine Lake solemnly remembers our fallen officer, Francis Manuel Ortega, and honors his service and sacrifice with deep gratitude and respect. Now, therefore, I, Brandy Hall, Mayor of the City of Pine Lake, do hereby proclaim the week of May 11th through May 17th, 2025 as National Police Week. So thank you. There's more. In the City of Pine Lake, and I call upon all residents to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities in recognition of the courageous service of our local, state, and national law enforcement officers. So apologies that this is a little late, but thank you for your service, and thank you to the Pine Lake Police Department for all that you do for this city. All right. Thank you. Okay, moving on to old business. The number 8 from the consent agenda got moved above the ordinance. Second read, so this is Resolution R 2025-46, the MOU of understanding between the city and Plain. So first I'm going to call for a motion to adopt the resolution, and then we'll second and open for discussion. So is there a motion to adopt the resolution? R 2025-46, the MOU.
I motion that we pass the resolution for discussion.
That we adopt the resolution. We'll open it for discussion.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I motion that we adopt the resolution.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, let's discuss. It's under it's right here. You see this, yeah, okay. All right, so Councilmember Torrent, since you pulled this, I'd love to have you open your discussion.
I did. I wanted to make sure that we and Plain are all on the same page, as it were, with this. And we had questions about how it's going and if there needs to be further amendment. Do we want to approve a Sunday evening adoption?
Okay, got it.
And if there are any other questions or concerns, I think now's the time to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I have experienced confusion during the week when it seems like Danita is not aware of what is going on. Things are posted in two different places. I think that was one of the things that we started out saying, that it was important that we did not impact the staff any more than necessary to do this. And I know that Danita has had some heartburn about the calendar. So I'm wondering if we can't, as a next step, there's some other things that we originally talked about, like the key box, so that was changed online, so that we didn't, that everybody in Pine Lake didn't have the same, the number for the facilities. But I'm wondering if we can't add something to, that moving forward, we need to somehow coordinate the calendars. I'm not sure what that looks like. I think Plain is on a Google calendar, and the city is on our city website calendar, and but I know that the website could be changed either way, or I think we should have everything on in one place.
I'd like to ask about the key box that we had discussed. Where are we on that?
You just approved item number,
Oh, I just went over the consent agenda, didn't I? I just passed right past that. So we
Well-
didn't yet approve it, but maybe real quick.
I'll do that.
Or
It's
after we
on
do
the
this.
consent agenda as item number 6, R 2025-44. The key box locks are going to be addressed under that, if you
Mhm.
approve it.
Okay. I'll go back to that after this item concludes. Sorry about that, y'all. Okay, and then your question, Councilmember Torrent, about Sunday evenings. The way I read the MOU now, it says Sunday evening through Friday between 8 and 5, so I'm assuming that means that has been addressed, allowing it for Sunday evenings? Is
That
that
was
how you read
not-
that?
That's a change.
It has never come before council.
It says it right here. Allow Plains use of the beach house and clubhouse Sunday evening through Friday.
As I'm said, it's never come
Okay.
before council.
That's the one we're approving.
Okay, I thought you were asking to add that. Is that not? I was just
Plain
pointing
is
out that it's
asking to
here.
add that in the MOU.
Okay.
It has never been discussed by council.
Gotcha.
How do we feel about that, council? Are there any objections to Sunday?
I guess I would like, I don't have any idea how many rentals happen on Sunday. Someone may have an idea of that.
Yes, so I'm blanking on the individual's name who wants to host the AA meetings on Sunday nights. But we sat there and went through the 2024 full calendar. We found only 2 paid rentals on Sunday evenings.
Okay.
And on those days, anything can be moved to the other location. So if there's a rental in the clubhouse, then that person can be moved to the beach house.
And the way we already are doing it, the rentals trump the use of the space by Plain. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Other concerns, we did receive a report from Plain in March regarding resident use of the beach house. Things are not perfect. We still have one resident using the beach house for what appears to be a business. It has a business-like website, and they list their place of business as our beach house. I am not comfortable with that.
I agree.
Agree with that.
Is there any sort of process by which we can revoke somebody's right to use it? if they continue to violate the MOU? Or does it fall back just completely on Plain? I don't know if my question's clear, Mr. Balch. but-
Let me try to restate it and see if I get it close to
Thank you.
right, Madam Mayor. If I understand both yours and Councilman Ramsey's question, the issue is what remedies does the city have if a sublessee under Plain seems to be using our spaces for a profit-making venture? Is that fair?
We have no proof that it's a profit-making venture, but it appears to be. It appears to be a business.
Well, there's not currently anything that I'm aware of in your codes or in the MOU that restricts the uses for which people can access our spaces, access our public spaces and use them for whatever gathering they wish to. If they are taking advantage of some sort of free use role in this circumstance and using it for a paid service or something like that, I think there's likely a gratuities problem that the city has, and what the city's remedies would be. We would have to discuss that with Plain. Plain is the contracting party with this outside business, so the city doesn't have standing to go get in the middle of that contract between Plain and this other entity.
That's my main question. Is it an action that the city would need to take to say, hey, you can't do it? Or is it an action that the city takes with
I think
Plain?
what the remedy is that the council would have to direct either the city manager or myself to engage with Plain and say, we have a concern about this particular rental and the circumstances under which it's going on. We need you to investigate what the circumstances are and report back to us so we can determine whether it's something we want to continue to allow.
Okay,
So one of the questions I have is, one of the ways some classes have had a suggested donation, donations accepted, or a fee. And I don't think our language clarifies or delineates between any of those. To me, it's different from, if you want to give me money, sure, versus a suggested donation is basically a fee. And
I mean,
a work around that.
the British Museum has a £5 suggested donation to enter what is otherwise a free museum in London. And I think the last time I had any intel about how successful they are, they get about 40% of visitors paying the suggested fee. And when you're talking about tens of thousands of visitors per day to that museum, that's still a chunk of change. That's the only circumstance where I know of a public entity that looks for a suggested fee for access to public property. The National Gallery tried that for a while in DC, but it did not last very long because nobody was paying it. So it would seem to me that the better course of action is that if the council wants this option, you could have a no-cost option for a business that they could demonstrate that they are recognized as a nonprofit under the under the Internal Revenue Code, or it's a fee that Plain is required to charge that we either split with Plain or we are paid directly to the city if it's any other type of business that's not recognized as a nonprofit. Those would be the two classifications, and the two easiest to police classifications that would be available to the council.
yeah, the way it's currently written, it says, such use shall be for events, classes, club meetings that are open to the community and free of charge. Donations may be accepted but not required, may not be required.
Yeah, again, that seems to sound more like the users are all nonprofits or otherwise associations of people that are connected to the city in some way, rather than a business-making entity, particularly an entity that lists its place of business as the clubhouse.
Most
that's
of
the
them, Chris,
intention.
are individuals who are, providing a cardio class or a yoga class or a book club coming together, things of that nature. There's just one that's appears different.
So it sounds like we can potentially leave it as is and then ask, it sounds like the course of action is to ask the administration to look into whether or not it's in violation of that.
Yeah, I think either my office or the administration needs to engage Plain and have Plain look into it, because that's their contract and their relationship, not ours.
I think my major concern here is this entity is using our beach house address as their place of business
Sure.
on their website. Can we get that stopped right away?
It should be as easy as us saying, hey, Plain, you need to get your sub-leasee or whatever in order, or it's going to ruin it for everyone, and let them self-regulate.
Yeah, Councilman Torrent, that's a version of what my suggestion is. Yours is a little more direct than what I suggested to the council. Mine's a little more subtle, perhaps. So I apologize if I was not reading the tenor of the council that I needed to be more direct, because I am certainly capable of doing that. I think that communication can be overt in a way that everybody is clear on what the council's intent is.
Okay.
Whether it comes from me or it comes from the administration.
Okay.
Question on a different tack along those lines. With any of these classes, the city assumes liability for anything that might happen there unless there's insurance involved or required by the people offering classes?
Plain is required to maintain insurance sufficient to cover any claims or liabilities arising from any aspect of any event organized or operated by Plain.
And also indemnifies the city for
Yeah.
those claims.
So
And
the
they're-
individuals who are teaching the class are not required to have any type of coverage because Plain has it and covers, that just seems gray to me.
If it's, I don't try to dictate other people's business relationships and agreements that I'm responsible for, so this one leaves that question unanswered, because our indemnity, the entity with whom we are contracting and to whom we would look to pay any claims that arise from their events or their activities is Plain, and that's where we stop. If Plain wants to take the additional step of requiring their lessees to have insurance in order to protect Plain, that's Plain's choice, not the city's choice.
So that protects the city, that's enough protection for the city.
The city's protection is directly with the entity with whom we are contracting, and that's the only entity that we have the ability to bind to that obligation.
Okay.
I may be talking lawyerese around you, Councilman, I don't intend that, but that's the best I can do with the questions I'm getting asked.
Right, no, I'm just, I know in some of the work that I have done, I'm required to provide a certificate of insurance if I am working at a facility, but I'm the third party.
Yep, but that requirement is a result of your agreement with the lessor that you're dealing with, not their lessor.
Okay, so just checking to make sure we are protected.
Yeah,
All right. Any other questions, comments about this?
there's one other point of clarification I want to make sure the council's aware of, Madam Mayor. The original Plain agreement had mutual indemnity language where the city also agreed to indemnify Plain. That language has been removed. And it's been removed at my instance because there is a Georgia Supreme Court case that says we can't do that as a matter of contract. We cannot waive the city's sovereign immunity by contract under these circumstances. So there's not any authority on the part of the city to indemnify some other party. So that's been removed. Plain has agreed to that change, and the contract as presented does not include that old language from prior years.
What would happen if Plain wanted to remove their indemnification of the city?
I wouldn't recommend approval of the contract.
Okay.
It's y'all's choice as to whether to do it or not, but your lawyer would say that's a bad idea.
Okay.
All right.
Does Plain have anything to say, or?
Yeah, also the city manager, and then. Okay. Sure, come on up.
I just want to clarify about the business thing. Plain has taken action regarding people who we thought were running a business there. There was a Sunday night instance one time, and they seemed a little too more business-oriented and beyond the suggestion of donation, and that person decided to cancel. In the case of the other person that was discussed, they have backed off a lot at our, and they were confronted very directly at a plain meeting. They said to us, it is not a business, it's a club. Now, they still have their address on there, so I think they're, I don't know how you can make language to say, you know, if I say, are you running a business? You go, no. I'll go, you know, they do list the address on their website, but they do say we're a community. So my main point is not whether this is a business or not, but that Plain has reached out to people who we thought were maybe going over the line. to
Thank
try
you.
to- And this person, in this case, did start backing off on listing, instead of putting a proper name for their thing, they just listed what the thing was.
Mhm.
You know, like Jonesboro Swimming Club, and they went to just Swimming Club. So that's, so Plain is active and does try to stay abreast of things. And to address the calendar thing real quick too, I have reached out to Danita more than a couple of times, sending links to our calendar and to our reservation form, and to our form that the reservation form generates an Excel spreadsheet, so it lists everybody that's renting and their names, addresses, and dates. So she has plenty of that information. I think the Plains Google Calendar could be embedded into the website. Google has a very easy method. Most people that can do web stuff can take that Google code, put it in the website, so it can sit there side by side the city calendar, if you can't integrate the two.
Great.
So
Yeah.
those are my points.
Thank you.
Is that something that you could help with, Calvin? Because I think, I mean, having worked with the website, our city website is very, it's not good in terms of the calendar, and it takes a lot of work to put things on there. I don't know, I mean, basically, our acting city clerk is dealing with that, the website, I'm more or less. is
Yeah,
that-
and I would like to maybe even task our IT contractor, VC3, to see if they could embed the Google Calendar for us.
Yeah, I mean,
I could supply the code.
yeah, I know they can. I don't think that's a problem. It's just a matter of doing a transition, and, you know, they need to look at it or whatever. But I think that, would that be okay to have that be our official city calendar? Is there any reason we couldn't do that, do you think?
Is there, my concern, and this could be completely unfounded, is if we have in our city calendar listing private events that we're not sponsoring, it looks like a sponsorship. Is that wild?
Well,
City manager?
we've been putting it on for,
I mean, I just want to speak from personal experience. I think what you're asking for is probably something that's already provided through Microsoft. I mean, I'm very into calendars, and I'm training staff on the use of the Outlook calendar. But I keep my personal calendar separate using Google or Yahoo. And I know that it can all be incorporated, my business calendar and my personal calendar, so that it's all on one calendar.
good.
So I think it's just a matter of Ned following up, but I think this will probably be a fairly easy solution to come up with.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good.
Any other discussion, or we're ready to vote?
I did have other
Oh,
comments,
yeah,
Mayor.
thank you. That wasn't related to that.
I wasn't planning to really talk about this, but I think it's related, and it's probably a matter of philosophy and kind of where Pine Lake is in its governmental structure. And I don't need to remind you all of the change in structure with the revised charter that you approved just last year with the state legislature and governor. But one of the things that will come out of the class and pay study that you have approved, as well as
you know, as we get into the new budget, I believe I have a responsibility as city manager to assess the organizational structure, and therefore the functions. And it is very obvious that this governing body, both current and past, that you have gone to some length to ease the burden on staff for good reasons. But I also think it's a different day in time. There are some responsibilities that you have taken on individually as a body, working with even the volunteers of the organization, which I'm not saying that it hasn't been a good idea. I mean, for the most part, what I see, it is largely working. But as your chief administrative executive officer, roles and functions that I believe are part of the government, the administrative government, I want to bring to your attention that we're not here to offer excuses of why we shouldn't at least be more of a direct part of it. Now, I give the example of you've never had a public works director. We now have that. We are going through a classification study, which is the first part of the classification and compensation study. And when that comes back to you, we are going to be looking at functions and the wearing of duties, the different hats, and presenting to you what is most ideal given the resources that we have, and maybe shifting some responsibilities, and even taking into account the talents of different resources in the organization. So I believe we are proceeding properly with the limited resources that we have had historically, and saying we need the assistance of others, you and Plain and other organizations. But I am going to be proposing some things that that probably means we are more of a partner with you in some of those things. I don't want to give too many examples, and I started with the Public Works Director, which in effect is now an official department with additional resources, who I believe can have more of a role when it comes to managing facilities, as an example. I mean, there's the maintenance aspect, but then there's the management of rentals and those kind of things. And should the staff be more integral to some of that, I believe there's room to bring you a proposal later to share that. So that's just one example, but from an overall standpoint, strategic communications is another example. I believe that you all have done a good job, the different individuals, from the Mayor Pro Tem, her past role, and Councilmember Goldberg now. But those things are so fundamental to administration and responsibilities that should go with the administration if we're aligned properly, and we prioritize things properly and classify things also. So more to come on that.
Thank you. Okay, is there, we had a second on the table. I'll call for a vote. All in favor of accepting or passing the resolution with the MOU?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, I'm going to back up and ask for a motion to accept the consent agenda
As amended?
as amended.
I motion that we accept the consent agenda as amended.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. So now we're on to ordinance 2025-02, Chapter 16, Public Nuisances, second read and adoption. So I know that y'all spent a lot of time, might be an understatement, at the last meeting. Chris, thank you for your thorough rewrite. It's riveting. Riveting read.
I hope you used it to help you get to sleep, Mayor, 'cause that's frankly about all it's good for.
No, I thought all the questions raised by Councilmember Bordeaux were wonderful. I appreciated the incorporation and your notations and all the things, so thank you.
All right, Mayor and Council, this is the second read of ordinance 2025-02, an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the city to enact Chapter 16 on public nuisances, to repeal conflicting provisions of the City Code of Ordinances, to provide for corrections and for other purposes. Let me just highlight to make sure that I got the changes that you asked for from your work session. I believe I got them all. We went through this 4 or 5 times in my shop to make sure that we'd gotten all the various notes and pieces and parts. The first question, or the first issue that was asked is on page page 6 at line 249. It's a change to subsection N, and the addition of the words "and illegal" before the words "commercial enterprise," when referring to where those things, to what kinds of commercial enterprises those relationships would apply to that would be illegal under the code. In lines 286 and 287, we put back in a revised version of the no use of alcoholic beverages, or no consumption of alcoholic beverages in the parks. We revised it to say that it's illegal to sell alcoholic beverage or any beverage containing any amount of intoxicating liquid except pursuant to a special use permit. That is to make sure that if we are allowing, or people are trying to sell alcohol in our parks or public spaces, that we get our cut based on our other ordinances, but that the simple carrying a glass of wine or carrying a glass of beer or those kinds of things for public use and public consumption within a park is not itself illegal. Under subsection 5, the tents, canopies, or temporary shelters, we amended to expressly exclude umbrellas and to provide a definition for what kind of umbrella we were looking for, as that being unnecessary and illegal, as well as any other temporary shelter for use overnight, which was the other part of that was of concern. Lines 314 to 317 concerning fishing. I think I found a way to get halfway between what Mayor Pro Tem Bordeaux was asking for and where I was comfortable with 2713. It does provide that fishing is not allowed from any bridge or other structure. Provides that fishing in the park shall only be pursuant to a valid license issued by the Georgia DNR, and the fishing will only be allowed in areas specifically designated by signage. That gives us the maximum control, I think, over that activity that the state code allows us, and it allows us to not have to write in the code, but in consultation with administration, the council can suggest areas, and then we can place signage that says fishing is allowed here, or fishing is not allowed somewhere else. I think that's the maximum that I'm comfortable with and what my recommendation to the council is. Swimming in paragraph 14 at lines 321 and 322, we added swimming is not allowed except in designated areas. So we have the swimming area at the beach that would be accepted from the no swimming and no wading provisions of the code.
Mr. Balch?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to stop you right there with the wading in streams. Again, we sometimes get into the creek to pull out garbage and such, and I would like to see that remain legal.
Yeah, I think, Councilman, if it's a city-sponsored cleanup event or something that is has city sanction, then I'm not all that concerned about it being excluded from being allowed. I would suggest to you that because of erosion issues and other quality issues under the Clean Water Act, just willy-nilly allowing people to wade, even if what they're doing is trying to clean up, without city sanction and city supervision, I think that causes me a little bit of heartburn, to be honest. So that the challenge that we face is drawing a very narrow space between those cleanup activities of which we are aware and are saying, yes, we want to participate and agree that this is something that a private organization can accomplish on our behalf, versus those that are just happening without our control and say. There's some liability issues about allowing it without our sanction. There's also, as I say, the Clean Water Act issues and erosion issues, like we discussed last time with people walking on the backside of the berm. The amount of traffic is creating pathways that then allows more erosion and more sediment to flow into the lake, and therefore thereby limits the life expectancy of the lake. The same thing happens with your streams. If you stir up a lot of sediment in your stream, it's only going to get one place to go, and it's going to fall out of that and silt up the lake. So between all of those various concerns, which is a whole bunch of lawyerese, I am not comfortable sanctioning wading just as a general activity in our streams. If it's part of a cleanup, that's something the city needs to be involved in.
I think those are, I don't see 2 people, 4 people causing enough erosion damage, and I think it'll kill any sort of impromptu cleanups, which I guess is what you're saying needs to happen. That we don't need to have impromptu cleanups. They need to be sanctioned by the city.
Those impromptu cleanups are the only thing that has cleaned up the
Yeah.
stream
Yeah.
since I've lived here.
Same.
Well, I mean, I've articulated my concerns. I suggested to you that I think it's a bad idea. As I said at your work session, what the final version of this is y'all's to decide. If you decide that that needs to be changed, you can make a motion to amend that particular piece. I would ask that if there are changes that you do intend to make from the dais, that we do it section by section, so that I can make sure I capture all of those and the city clerk can capture all those, so that we put together the final version of this. We have some understanding that what we've got is what you intended. So rather than making a laundry list of amendments and then voting them up or down or whatever, if we could go section by section, a move to amend. For instance, if you wanted to change that language in paragraph 14, the motion would be something to the effect of that the movement asks or moves that the council amend section 16-36, subparagraph C14, and then whatever the amendment is, and then identify, just so we're clear, what lines it is in the last draft, which is the last public version that's been made available to the general public about the changes. So if you would do that for us, I think administratively it's going to take forever, perhaps, but I'd rather be careful and take forever than to do it quickly and there be lots of mistakes in what got said and what got done.
I agree with that. With that sentiment of doing it right the first time. Is this one of those issues, if we were to say strike or wade from that 14, is that something that would make it so that you would not sign? Because you have in previous objections to things said, if you want to do that, I won't sign it.
No, that's not one of those things. And the only time I ever say that to a client, whether it's y'all or anybody else, the only time that's ever said is in something I think flagrantly violates the law. And I try not to say that particular phrase out loud, but by saying I can't support it, that's the message I'm trying to send. And that is not a change that I have that feeling about.
Okay, thank you. Could I make that motion now?
Can I get all the way through?
Yes.
Yes.
Saying
Very
that,
sorry.
making sure I got all the things I was supposed to change first?
Yes,
then we can
absolutely.
do
So
that?
sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm asking because I'm not in charge of the meeting.
And Chris, this is just a clerical thing.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't know if it needs to be a motion, but the numbering starting after 8, paragraph 8 is off. I'm gonna assume there was because of the deletion, but just so you're aware.
Thank you. I will make those
Great.
changes, and we will include those within the scrivener's changes that Ned and I take care of.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and there's 2 14s there too instead of,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, basically through 15, they're a little funky.
If
It's
you had
missing a
spent-
9.
I don't say this pejoratively, but if y'all had spent as much time reading through this and trying to understand it as I have, you wouldn't see things.
It all
either.
starts to blend together.
Ugh.
I get that from writing a book this winter. Just
My-
like so many pages.
My
just like,
apologies
ugh.
for the errors. Page 11 is the next change I was asked to make from the work session, beginning at line 428. That for the first 2 years, we're going to require 50% of inspections of your multifamily, and then after those 2 years, it's 25% per year. So that we get everything inspected in the first 2 years of enforcement, and thereafter, we're doing a fourth of every property per year.
Okay.
I think the next thing is in the noise ordinance related to fireworks. The legislature seems to want to mess with the fireworks code in chapter 25, article 10, almost every year. In fact, there are changes this year. They're not substantive to what controls the ordinance that's proposed, but I did rewrite 16152 B5 to reflect the current state of the state statute related to the ability to do fireworks. It also includes a subsection, should be A and B instead of B and C, my apologies. Subsection B that addresses permits, because we now finally have the ability to require permits for people to shoot off fireworks, and it includes individuals. Didn't used to have that authority. 3 or 4 years ago, the ability to require permits for fireworks in by local governments was completely preempted. The legislature is gradually adding things back as they finally hear from their constituents, and not just the fireworks companies, that there are things that need to have local control and local input. But the instruction I received last time was to review the state of that statute and to provide you the most control that the statute currently allows, and that's what we have done here. Let's see, may have skipped over something real quick. Let me find it. Right, if I can go back, please, to page 18. I missed this on the weeds and grass, Article 6. You had asked that 16193 be moved back under the same thing with weeds and grass. So there's now a new 16123, which used to be 16193. It's just basically cut and paste and brought back earlier in the code. Also, there's a change to line 736 that provides that the owner of any property in the city, whatever the zoning classification, the maximum amount of grass, weeds, or other undergrowth cannot exceed 12 inches. So that applies globally across all properties, vacant, improved, or not.
Good.
I think that's the substantive changes that you asked for from the work session. There was a request in Mayor Pro Tem Bordeaux's notes that she did not wish the city council to adopt the property maintenance code, which is one of the optional codes that the Department of Community Affairs allows cities to adopt. I heard only that one voice on that, so I did not remove the property maintenance code adoption from the proposed ordinance. Property maintenance code provides the standards by which we are able to examine the blighted or derelict properties. So from a enforcement perspective, it's critical, in my judgment, to the enforceability and the intent of what the rewrite was to accomplish. So that being said, I appreciate your patience in letting me go through those details. I know we've talked about this till all of us are about sick of hearing me talk about it. So what can I answer about whatever is left?
I would like to just clarify, because we spent a lot of time talking about the fireworks. So as it is written now, fireworks are only allowed on these days with a permit?
No, fireworks are generally allowed between 10 a.m. and 11 o'clock at night. They are allowed later and earlier in the day on the designated days, but a permit is required to light off fireworks at any time.
So a person needs a permit if they're going to do fireworks
Yes.
any day of the year.
Correct.
And if it is on these days, then it can start earlier than 10 a.m. and go later than midnight?
It goes to midnight, and then on New Year's night, obviously it stops, New Year's Eve, stops at midnight on New Year's Eve, but then it is allowed till, I believe it's 1 a.m. on New Year's Day.
Okay.
So fireworks can go as late as 1 in the morning, but that's into the next day, so it's split.
I got you.
Legislative
That's how days
Council,
work, yeah.
Legislative Council and I disagree about how much detail is necessary, but I don't get to control what they do.
I just want to make sure we're all clear on that. And real quick, going back to, where is the 1624-36, number 13, where we talk about roller skating. We had talked about skateboarding and scooters. And the way this is written, it looks like those are not allowed.
Correct. As currently recommended, yes, that's correct.
And the reason we're not allowing skateboarding and scooters?
The most oftentimes that I am either close to injured or actually injured when walking on the belt line is from scooters and skateboarders. That's just my personal experience and why I bloody well hate those things. But I recognize I'm a minority. The purpose of the ordinance as proposed is not my personal bias. The purpose of the ordinance is that people who are skateboarders or are riding scooters, particularly the electric ones, don't pay attention to where they're going like they ought, and they ride up on people's heels and Achilles, and then everybody falls down in a crash, and it's a complete mess. So there's a public safety issue to some of it. You will see signage in commercial properties almost uniformly that skateboarding is not allowed in public spaces. Their sidewalks or entry spaces for large commercial properties. Again, that's a public safety decision that property owner has made, and I'm simply recommending that same choice be made by the council.
I disagree. I think that, I don't know, if kids are out skateboarding, I'd rather them be out skateboarding than inside all day. It's just outdoor recreation. And if that becomes an issue, I think maybe we can do something about it. I don't think it is a problem here, and I don't think allowing it officially will create one. And as far as scooters, we talked about motorized vehicles in 15 vehicles, where it's unlawful to use any motorized vehicle, which I think would include the electric scooters and bikes.
It says it should not, this prohibition shall not apply to scooters or bicycles powered by electric motors.
What about four-wheeled electric vehicles?
Is he making those now?
Yeah, they've made them.
The only ones.
They're called golf carts.
Oh, fair point. See, you say four-wheel vehicles, and I'm automatically thinking ATVs, which are running up and down in front of my house on Sundays. The 36C15 would exclude the ability to use golf carts within the parks and public spaces as it's currently written,
But not on the streets.
not on the streets.
Okay.
Right.
That's all I care about.
I mean, using it on the street is a whole different set of statutory restrictions on whether the vehicle is itself street legal. In other words, taillights, headlights, turn signals, seat belts, those kinds of things. If there's also a requirement that the maximum speed limit on the street where they're being used can't exceed 35 miles per hour. So So there's a host of challenges to get to using electric vehicles, golf carts on the roadways, but that's a completely separate set of circumstances about whether they're allowed in the park.
So forms of transportation are changing daily, the types of vehicles. So this, the one-wheel motorized scooter, things that people stand on either side of the center wheel.
Segways?
Electric
No.
unicycles.
It's like a skateboard with one wheel.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah.
In my experience in Pine Lake, the only recreational means of transportation that I've had some scary interactions with is someone riding a bicycle super fast around the back of the lake on the dam, like skirting around people. Roller skating, skateboarding, all this others, I don't have an issue with, and I don't see, to me, one of the joys of Pine Lake is when I get to see a family who has a young child learning how to roller skate or skateboard or ride a bicycle in Pine Lake because it's safe. And I that just warms my heart because non-residents come here for that reason, because
As this is written, though, doesn't this say, for instance, that it's okay to roller skate on paved surfaces, so the back berm would be okay to roller skate?
right, but it doesn't
Only
include
roller
only
skating.
roller skating.
Oh, okay, only roller skating.
So
not-
I think the view of skateboarding is that that's always a little rebellious and it's always had a bad reputation. I skateboarded generations ago. It was rebellious back then. I think it's a means of transportation for some people.
And recreation.
So I don't have an issue with skateboarding or, again, I think the main thing is as long as it's being done in a way that is not inflicting fear in other people who are walking or in public spaces.
Yeah, Augusta.
Yeah, on skateboarding, could it like mention something, because I've seen kids bring ramps out and skate over them and things, and I think that causes a problem versus just using the sidewalk, the driveways and the paved areas to skate versus bringing out actual things and just skateboarding off of. I think they had one at the tennis court they were skateboarding off of.
Yeah.
So, without, being able to skateboard and not bring added equipment to do tricks and things like that, I think wouldn't be a problem with skateboarding.
Yeah, the challenge that any drafter like me has in writing a code is how far deep in the weeds do you dive?
Yeah.
So the way I got taught 100 years ago when I was a baby lawyer to draft ordinances for local governments was to stop at 30,000 feet. That's where the control stops. If what the council decides it wants to do, which is again within your prerogative, is say these things are allowed, but these mechanisms of use or accoutrement, if you want, of use are not allowed, you can certainly get down to that granular level and make that policy choice. That's your prerogative. My job as the drafter is different because I'm trying to anticipate what your needs are based on my training and experience and liability issues and things like that, which are going to be different than your individual training and experience. So the final policy choice remains in the breast of the council. It's not mine. I'm not telling you you can or can't do something, although I have done that with fishing. I'll stick by my guns in that regard. In this circumstances, that is not one of those things. If you want to make that policy choice, that's within your prerogative.
Councilperson Woods, I think the ramp that's in the tennis courts now is going to be fixed because we decided that we're not allowing skateboarding there at all. And so once it gets repaved, that'll be taken out. So I think that concern will be taken care of.
Okay.
Am I correct in that assumption?
Well,
As long as they don't place it on some other paved surface.
I don't know, it seems to me that simplicity is an important thing here. And like you say, when you get really granular, there's a lot of questioning of it. I thought we had said something in our last discussion about basically no motorized vehicles of any kind, and I would include electrical as a motor as well. And I don't know, call that something else, but assisted vehicles or whatever. But it would be simpler to just be able to say that only motorized vehicles are not allowed on the paths. I
So-
don't know, I've seen a lot of bicycles on the path with kids that, I mean, I haven't had that experience of anybody running me over or anything like that. So I like the idea of bicycles, scooters, all of those things. And I don't see a real significant difference between roller skating and any of those other things, because roller skaters could run into you just as easily as anybody else. So, I don't know. That's what I would like to see.
So,
All those other things need to be on the street if they're motorized or assisted in any way.
so two thoughts. One is yes about the motorized, except what about motorized wheelchairs or accessibility scooters?
I think that's a different,
Um,
they're allowed by ADA.
and then I would be happy just striking 13,
That's what I was
just
thinking
removing
too.
it.
Although I don't think that, are you guys, are y'all proposing that electric scooters, because it seems like before you're saying electric scooters, in 13, the use of any other type of wheeled device or vehicle shall be unlawful, but then under 15, it does not apply to scooters or bicycles powered by electric motors. So are we saying electric scooters and bikes are then allowed? Does,
I would rather
No, I
not
think we
see.
Get rid of
yeah,
it.
I agree. I was just clarifying. So then if we strike 13, do you want to make a note of this, Thomas, in your
have to
list
vote
of
on
other
it.
ones?
So
If we
we'll-
strike 13 altogether and then leave 15 as is, but remove the prohibition about scooters and electric bikes, electric scooters and electric bikes? Does that encapsulate what council's saying?
So remove the exclusion of scooters and bikes powered by electric motors, is what you're
Exactly,
saying.
so
Okay.
it's just no motorized vehicles whatsoever, and then we don't say anything about roller skating,
Yeah.
roller blading, roller cycling, unicycling, pogo sticking, you know? The modes of transportation, like you're saying.
So, Mr. Welch, we need to make a motion to do that now?
Or do we do it, we can do the whole list that we have
Yeah,
toward the end, when we read the ordinance?
It's gonna be easier for me to track, to be honest with you, Councilman Torn, if I'm back over in my chair and being able to listen to each particular motion for amendments, than if I try to track it here.
Gotcha, okay.
Anything else that we need to discuss
What I
about
heard
the council's
only
choices?
sounds like there's two. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just two so far. Okay, so then, since we got through it, is there a motion to adopt ordinance 2025-02, chapter 16, public nuisances, second read?
I move that we adopt.
I guess you should read the header, if there's
okay.
one. There is not one.
There is not one.
Okay, so then let's just do what we got.
Second read.
I would, okay, I would move that we adopt ordinance 2025-02, chapter 16, public nuisances,
I second.
With the two
with the
amendments.
two changes that were discussed by council.
All right, so let me make sure, if I can restate for the record, please, just to make sure that I'm clear and that the record is clear about what the amendments are, please. The council wishes to strike current 16-36 C13 related to roller skating, and then also to remove the last sentence of C15 in 16-36. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct.
And remove or waiting.
Or waiting,
From
yeah.
14.
From 13.
It's listed as 14 as
From
well. but-
14,
Yeah,
Could-
there's two
Yeah.
14s.
Could I
from the
just,
swimming or waiting.
could I
clause.
just say something about the waiting? Because I think we were talking, sorry, I can get to that, but that's not just in the streams, then you're allowing wading in the lake, are you not? In the way this language is?
It says in any stream, river, lake, or other natural body of water.
Do we see a lot of?
Except
So
in
we're-
designated areas.
Right, so what council's proposing is it should just say, it shall be unlawful to swim in any stream, river, lake, or other natural body of water except in designated areas, and completely strike or wade. But you could,
So wading would be allowed in both the lake and any other stream or body of water.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is I think that's what that's what we are allowing if we if we strike
Mhm.
wading.
Correct, that would be, I would agree with that
Which
intent.
means that, I would assume, any place in the lake where it's low enough to wade, and I'm not sure that we want that.
especially from like a stream bank
I
stabilization.
mean, it's how we get into our kayaks. Those of us that boat, we
That's
have
a
to wade in
designated
to
area,
get
though.
into
It's how we
it.
clean up around the lake. The trash that accumulates around the lake and fishing debris.
So I have a question. Is it better to just uniformly allow it by excluding it, or is it better to include it and not enforce necessarily when people are picking up trash? I mean, it
Again-
could be, but are they enforcing it? You know what I mean?
We talked about this earlier, and I don't think it's a good idea to write a thing that you don't plan to enforce. That's just me. I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh.
Well, I think it makes sense to just not speak to wading
At all.
anywhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we're
In-
not
in other
gonna,
words, you-
we're not gonna establish a waiting
waiting-
zone.
Right, exactly, but just not speak to it and deal with it as it comes up. If somebody does something that is obviously detrimental, then we'll deal with it at that point.
So then if we just strike from 14, it says swimming, it shall be unlawful to swim in any stream, river, lake, or other natural body of water except in designated areas is what we're talking about.
Yep. So you
Is
have that
Is
captured?
that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
And Mayor Pro Tem, my understanding of the removal of the or wade in this language does exactly what you're describing. It does not speak at all to wading or where it's allowed or not allowed, and allows the use of the exercise of reasonable judgment about if there's harm being caused, then it's addressed at that point for that individual that might be causing harm, as opposed to having a designated wading area sign or something
Right.
to that effect. All we're gonna do is have designated swimming areas and not even speak to where wading is allowed or not allowed.
Yeah.
You don't have waiting areas.
Okay,
I'm good with that.
all right. So is
I-
there a second?
I still second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Great work.
Good job,
Nice.
Mr. Belch.
Yeah,
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes. Okay,
I want to
Um,
say again that the diligence and care with which the council addressed this ordinance is exemplary. I appreciate your candor and your zeal to reach an appropriate resolution to all of these questions and all these issues. I can count on one hand the number of rewrites like this where I've experienced this level of engagement by the elected body in the process. And I thank each and every one of you for your attention and your professionalism.
thank you.
And patience with everybody here involved.
All right, so item that was number 1 on the consent agenda that is now moved to the next one. We've got these 3 resolutions, R 2025-39, 40, and 41. I do want to just remind council that all 3 of these were in the budget that council approved at the beginning of the year, and in the capital improvement plan that Mr. Kendrick presented previously. So, Mr. Kendrick, would you like to speak to R 2025-39, the restoration of the clubhouse, firehouse, the storage.
Forgive me for looking like allergies. I'm taking medication, so I seem disinterested. Yeah. Which one are we on?
39, the firehouse.
Oh, yes. Okay. Initially, what we're thinking with the firehouse is a very underutilized space. It's just got remnants of pretty much everything in there. And so as we were renovating the old City Hall, it became, one of our overall goals in doing all these renovations was to create space and for storage and for personnel. It became apparent that we were still going to be short of space, and we had displaced the pantry that was located in the old City Hall building. And so we were, we had a meeting with the plane, I think that, and Ms. Rachel that kind of coordinates that. And so the thought was we were going to create that space over here, but structurally that won't be possible. So we turned our attention to finding where we could make additional space, and it was right there in front of us with the old firehouse. It's approximately 650 square feet, and we could more accommodate a similar size space for the pantry there, and also accommodate the additional storage, the other 400 or so square feet for our, storage for the police records, other records in the city, so that we have greater accountability while we're the custodians of those records during that period of time when we're required to keep those records. Because we did have a meeting today where, it became apparent that, the storage of records in Pine Lake hasn't been what it needed to be. So
It's
hopefully
understatement.
this could kind of get a handle on that. And what we'll end up doing is, cannibalizing that space and turning it into a more workable space, not only for the pantry to be able to serve their mission, but also to increase storage space for our records and other things that administration needs to accommodate.
Mm-hmm. And originally, we were talking about, when we were first looking at this at the beginning of the year, was there also a conversation about using that as storage for the generator,
No,
potentially?
not
No.
storage for the generator.
Okay.
I think that conversation became, once we did, procure the generator, which buildings would we bring online? And what we had did was we kind of put in like 2 generators for 2 spaces, this space and that one separately. But as we, started looking into it and talking with the generator reps, we realized that we didn't have to do it.
Okay.
And that one generator, we just needed to size up, and then we would make the appropriate connections, and we could bring this building online with one of the other 2 buildings. Hopefully, we could get all 3.
Great.
It would just some additional accessories that we would have to install to be able to create the, quote unquote, as the chief likes to say, the emergency management operations center during a storm.
Right.
So.
Right.
So that's how that, I think you
How
referred
it
to
kind
that
of evolved.
conversation.
Okay,
Yes.
that
No,
makes sense.
It was never supposed to be housed inside. The
Okay.
generator will be outside like
Right.
this one.
Great.
So a question with, with police records being stored in that, this building, is there any concern about a citizen having access to that same space, or how, do those records need to be secured from potential public access.
How would Plain be differentiated from, how would Rachel have access, but not access to?
Inside of what you approved for the facility alarm monitoring services, and let me go back and address that. We've got our buildings now, and Ned maybe speak more to how it functions, but overall the system is kind of disjointed. And what we're going to accomplish with that is that, you know, staff will have access to all the alarms, or say the chief will have access to all of the alarms. Staff in different buildings will have via app access to the alarms on their phones for that particular building. Okay, and then there'll be cameras, DVR backup to that. That's something that the chief wanted, you know, in case, you know, you have to review back on if there was an incident, that type of thing. And also we're incorporating the keyless door pads on all buildings. And all of those door pads have up to 50 codes, separate codes. So what the chief is working on is a list of code assignments so that everybody, you know, will have a different code. And when it comes down to like event management, Ms. Robinson will be able to issue a code to whomever has the access to the clubhouse this weekend. They'll get a separate code from whoever rents it next weekend. Because we've faced that issue before too, where someone had a code from, you know, previous rental, but still had the same code,
Yeah.
you know, to be able to access. So hopefully that eliminates that issue.
Will they be physically differentiated,
That's my
the
question.
spaces, the pantry
Yes.
from the police?
Oh, yes,
The
yes.
record
We're
storage,
gonna,
yeah.
like I said, it's 650 square feet there. And what we anticipate is just creating a space about what's Plain had, and that was plenty of space that they had over there. Replicating that there and maximizing the other two areas for separate space, because the chief had, it was a little different. She had some quote unquote like outdoor type equipment that she wanted to keep separate, that from, you know, just records.
Right.
But the records area will be larger than the other two areas because they don't need that much space to operate out of. The access point, there will be a door, but to the records area, there will be, once again, key lock. And pretty much that one is pretty much gonna be limited to maybe, you know, the chief and the city manager, the folks that really need to be in there. I see that as being a really short list of people that need, and city clerk.
Yeah.
And I think the court clerk has some space going on in there too. But that'll be a really short list of access for those points.
Great. I want to say I appreciate your creativity. It feels very Pine Lake, knowing that in the beginning of the year you laid out some needs that we have around storage, around assessing the buildings that we currently have and getting creative with how we might be able to use them and where the different, you know, office spaces and things. So this seems like a natural extension of that creative thinking.
Making space where you don't have space.
Yeah.
It's a
Now building
necessity.
whole new buildings.
It's a necessity, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in general, for me, I don't have an issue with these, but what I'm thinking more philosophically, residents are concerned about property taxes and cost of living here, and we're getting a lot of our infrastructure, I don't know if that's the right word, taken care of and upgraded and fixed and remodeled and it's highly necessary. But I don't see as much of the public use facilities. So if I'm sitting here as a resident going, hey, that's great, but where's my money going to? What do I get out of it? So I'd like to see like a little balance between some work also being done on Clubhouse Beach House that are what our residents do use, but also understanding the importance of the infrastructure is huge, because it's not been done in so long. And just thinking public perception is, what do I get out of that?
And it's also, I would argue, a big liability to the city to have spaces that are near condemned, that are falling apart, that are public hazards, should people enter them, like the case of the city hall, the old city hall. You know.
Well, that's been done and taken care of.
Mhm.
But, and yes, we have discussed the need for more storage. We've talked about the need to revisit the Public Works building. I don't think we did talk about reallocating and reconstructing space within City Hall in the past. But looking at this is $200,000 worth of work with these three projects that are being proposed. That's not a number that we have talked about.
Do you want to speak to that, Mr. City Manager,
Well-
or Mr. Hendrick?
It was in the 6-year CIP, but it was,
Yeah, may have been in the 6-year CIP, but it wasn't front-loaded in one set of resolutions put forth in a consent agenda.
okay. Well, let me say this, because I think part of the discussion that we had when we put all these in there, talking about facilities management, and let's go back before we, even had the small cities allocation fund and SPLOST. We came back and we, kind of reimagined or revisualized, the needs. Well, those was already when I first got here. We saw what the needs, I did those assessments, and then we came upon the funding. So then we started sitting down and kind of planning those things out and placing those into that 6-year CIP, along with the other list of almost everything that needed to happen in Pine Lake, infrastructure-wise, facility-wise, all those types of things. And they were placed in there, but sometimes they weren't on the same year, but they were on the separate years, year 1, 2, whatever. But then we turned around, I think it was right in January, and the reality of tariffs and those types of things hit, and shortages coming upon us that were not so much of a reality, before January, and we, came upon this money, but they actually physically started to materialize. We started seeing shortages, lumber, materials, other things that directly impacted getting these projects done. And so pushing those things out, scoping them up and pushing those things out, became, something that I felt that was my job to be able to, have to do. And so I presented those and trying to get those out. And my whole thing with this was, we're not going to be able to do all of these this month. But the reality is getting these things approved, as we did in 6-year CIP, getting them back in front of you, now becomes incumbent upon me to schedule those things. And it would be a lot more cost beneficial and cost effective to pay for stored material, to buying it at today's price, than waiting until August and September, when there's definitely going to be price increases, and it's going to drive the prices up on these things. I think
Perhaps.
yeah, well, perhaps, yeah. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know, first of the year and toward going to the end of summer, prices do increase, and and that's across the board. And we're going to actually face this same dilemma next month when we start talking about resurfacing, because as of actions of this past week, oil prices might be going up. That's going to directly affect the cost of asphalt. So we're going to see, or maybe get an advantage here of what the prices we're going to see as far as bid prices next week when bid closes on resurfacing. And I don't know how the bidders are going to push, how those numbers are going to look.
Mr. Kendrick, I don't take issue with any of this work that needs to be done. I question the timing. I question the balance of project work versus scheduling basic care and maintenance of our grounds. I just see an equation that's out of balance with too much project and less day-to-day care of our public space.
Okay, well, let me address that balance.
Address Councilmember Ramsey's question from more of a global standpoint. And I will take responsibility. I know I've, since I've been manager, presented some processes to you through your public meetings that are different. And I probably haven't taken the time to make sure that the council fully understood implications of things that we've asked you to approve. But when I got here, one of the issues and a top priority that you all recognized needed to be addressed was a budget that you approved for 2025 that needed to be addressed for issues that you, and then after I got here, knew needed to be fixed. And so we presented to you, I think starting probably in the February meetings, work sessions, that we needed to bring back both the 2024 budget reconciliations that were passed due, and then this current budget that we were in. So we introduced a process of budget modifications that went into some detail through the strategic performance report that really laid out through dozens of pages all of those issues that you were aware of in the budget. Even as we address your capital funds that hadn't been approved at all, the two SPLOST funds, as well as the intergovernmental agreement. So when we came to you in, I believe, the April work session, and Councilmember Rams, if my memory is correct, I think you missed that meeting, but that was the full presentation that Mr. Kendrick gave of what was also new, a 6-year CIP, long-term. As a part of the budget amendments, from the capital standpoint, we said that we would come back at that second meeting and make recommendations that you certainly had to affirm of the priorities. Mind you, by April 29th, when it was presented and you approved it, we are third of the year through. But that list, which included general fund, operations, the two SPLOST funds, and intergovernmental, this year. So in your thread that that I got a chance to read later in the morning, I know that was one of the issues. So when you deal with the long-term plan, and then from a budget standpoint, you approve those things most immediately, that's of course prioritizing that the legislative body sets. So the list of things in the consent agenda is never an issue. That's always been understood. I may project what I think you've considered before, put it on the consent agenda without question. All it takes is, as you did this evening, to move it out. But from your approving the budget, amended budget on April 29th, with these projects, the message and direction that gives to staff is to proceed with the next steps of the process. And that's basically where we are. So in the aggregate, I don't think you're looking at different numbers. From the expertise of the director, as he's now taking your policy and trying to make the most cost-effective recommendations, it may look a little bit different. But the appropriations for all of this were approved in your budget. as the priorities that you gave to the staff, as well as the timing and the reason that we were moving certain projects ahead sooner. My final comment is this, and I think Councilmember Goldberg makes a good point. I'm being concerned always with our neighbors of the benefit that they're receiving from capital improvements such as this. But let me remind you that in property that the city owns, our neighbors are the owners. So there's a benefit of maintaining property that they own, just like any of you may individually own. And there should be some pride in the facilities that our neighbors own. I'll use an example such as the White House, or the Capitol building in DC, or city halls as they're recognized as houses of the people. And one of the things from my non-expertise when I came to the city was the building that I spend the most time in. We're well below standards. And it was a while before I got around to tour all of the other buildings of the city. Mr. Kendrick hasn't said this publicly, at least tonight, but facilities is one of his expertise. And before we got into recommendations, one of the things that he said to the staff in one of our staff meetings was, to the point, and I'm paraphrasing, but he couldn't think of a building that we own that was at a standard that it needed to be. And he actually described it more seriously. I spend most of my time at City Hall, and I will tell you, anytime I join an organization, until I get my personal space right, I'm simply not as productive. So the staff told me when I started the first day, oh, there are plans for new furnishings for your office. So I kind of accepted that, didn't really know what it meant. But they kind of pushed that and made it a priority. Now, I will tell you, the conditions that I was working in, from desks to equipment, I was quite ashamed of it. In fact, I would only go so far in reaching my hands into certain drawers, not to mention the external appearances of things. So I don't mean to make this personal, but the thing that I found myself thinking about, this community deserves to have pride in its facilities that it owns. So anytime we're investing and doing proper maintenance, that is for the benefit of our community. I walk around City Hall to this day, and I'm a healthy person. I don't really have, at this point, any mobility issues. But I find myself, as I walk through that building, even just to go to the bathroom, you walk around a corner or into a new section, and the floor is slant, and you have to be careful that you know where you're walking for fear of some type of accident. Now, that's just my personal, non-professional, but your expert has made a much more thorough assessment according to some other, I'm sure, building and national standards. And we get a failing grade. So it's time to invest in all of the community's properties. And we're certainly going to get to the clubhouse and the beach house, because I can't tell you how unimpressed I was when I got my first tour of those facilities. We can do better, we must. But I'll let Kendrick continue.
So for me, I think what I would request, it because I agree with, like, we need to invest because it just is so dire, many of these, and then also creating space to get us up to standards on many other things in terms of storage and the such. I think what is missing for me is some information so that we could share that and educate our residents about what you just really said. And I don't know where that would come from. So my hope would be something in one of the news blasts would be some information to that effect, because the better informed and the more educated and information we share with our residents, the better they're going to take that pride. And they're also going to go, my money's being well spent. I get it now, like they'll say. So would that be something you would maybe write up or something that we could send out to the residents?
Yeah, and I know, I don't want to, spill any beans, but I do talk with my staff, and I'm aware of your concerns because you had conversations with the acting city clerk, and I know if there's anything that you're passionate about, Councilmember Goldberg, is making sure that our neighbors know. I don't know that I'm as passionate as you, but I'm certainly passionate. I always want to educate, but I will remind you that one of the reasons why we took on the strategic performance report, and remember that paragraph that I always put in there, that it's written to be succinct, interesting, with pictures and all of that. So I think all that we're talking about this evening, it has been presented in the budget modifications, the way that was presented in strategic performance report, which you always make the link. But I also know human nature. They're not going to read at any given time all of that, and then it's quickly forgotten. But we can certainly, on an ongoing basis, do reminders, and that's partly happening with each strategic performance report. And you all, almost to a person, complimented Mr. Kendrick on his updates on the capital project, so all of that can be factored in. Earlier this evening, I mentioned to you some things that I believe that we have, I'll say, loaned out to those of you willing to do the extra. Strategic communication is something that I fundamentally believe needs to be the responsibility of the staff, certainly working with you all, but that we're taking the lead on, so we can do the very kind of reporting that you're requesting on an ongoing basis. And I've got plans for that. I just haven't released them to you. I've got people identified who I want to do certain things, but all of that is going to come in time as well.
I would be happy to share that and pass that off.
And I worry about when you're not there, 3 years from now, you may decide not to run for office again.
More questions about the firehouse resolution? Okay, is there a motion to adopt resolution R 2025-39?
I motion that we adopt Resolution R 2025-39.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, resolution R 2025-40, the renovations to City Hall.
Pretty much on the same note, city manager kind of summed it up. We need to kind of, move some things around that, accommodate the offices for the acting city clerk and some other administrative decisions that the city manager is, making regarding that space.
Real quick question. Oh,
W-
sorry, Tom.
Were these updates to City Hall in the CIP,
In the budget modifications.
in the
Yeah,
6-year?
Yes, it was actually a little bit more. I think I put it as like $92,000, but as we got to, kind of, walking the floors with the Mr. Brown and everything, we kind of brought that number down a little ways, and we're able to get those done.
Once again, I bring up the concern that Mr. Goldberg had about the beach house. Okay? Hang on 1 second. Let me finish my thought here. Okay, I don't know whether you've pulled the stage away from the wall at the beach house at all, that little platform that's there. and seen the rot that goes straight through to the outside. Pretty much termite damage that was remediated but never repaired. You've got flooring in there that is uneven, unsuitable for many uses. You've got a non-functional kitchen with cabinets that are insect infested and falling apart. And that's the actual facility that we try to rent out and raise revenue from. In terms of priorities, I mean, I'm looking at, you've just finished the old city hall. The court staff is going to be moving into that facility, correct? So you're going to have some space free up. I'm just looking at in terms of priority, and I'm not saying you don't need to repair and rehabilitate City Hall. I believe you do. But I think the beach house is in far more need of being repaired and reconstructed than the current City Hall.
It hasn't been neglected. It is on my radar. And here's the reason why, two things. We kind of lumped that in with the recreation master plan, facilities-wise. But we also knew, just as you said, it was going to be a real heavy lift with that. And we wanted to take our time with the scope of that work because, just as you said, the kitchen is non-functional. And one of the main reasons that I really didn't want to get into that is that we got some issues with plumbing there.
We do.
When it's a couple months ago, we had to do, the county came in to do the grease trap inspection. We had to turn them around because we couldn't get the grease trap open. We had to pry it open. I mean, literally, we had to, and it took 2 or 3 turns to get it in there. We had to literally, to use a term, take a cheetah bar and get on the floor, and this guy's pushing that way and this guy's pushing that way to be able to access the thing.
I understand, but if you want to know the one building in this town that represents the house of the people,
Yes.
that's the building.
I understand that, and what's gonna have to happen when we get around to doing that, and I mean, to get a serious scope about that building's gonna be taken offline for quite some time. And to propose this now, if we even tackle this now, well, we can't, because you got the season here for the beach. But I would assume that I'll be ready to move forward with that.
Well,
And
the
we
beach doesn't impact the beach house. People can use the beach without the beach house. But neither here nor there. I guess what I'm saying is, if you want to communicate to the residents of this city that you take pride in the buildings that the city owns, you need to let them know that that building is a priority for you. And even if you're not prepared to do it now, if you've got a plan for it, lay it out, communicate it. Because when they see all of this, and keep in mind, we've just totally rebuilt that old city hall. We've replaced almost every roof in the city. We've redone this building. They're not seeing the building that they use every single day, even on your radar screen as far as they're concerned. And they need to see that.
I'll make it a point to, on the next work session, to have that topic with a detailed scope of work of what we plan to do for that building.
That would be great.
I'll make sure that be, if we don't do anything else, we'll have a conversation centered around whatever the scope of work we will do, and I'll bring pictures and those types of things, and a preliminary estimate of bringing that building up to where it needs to be, and then we can have some input
And I think once you do that, I think you'll see
Wha-
Danita really soar in terms of her ability to rent that space, because right now, she doesn't have a competitive space.
But, and we've had conversations regarding that in both spaces as far as events go. And that's literally been on a daily basis for the last couple of months. But I commit that to you, that will be on the next agenda, to talk about. But I also want to also say too, that part of what we did, what you approved last month regarding the electrical infrastructure supports that building, to get that done.
Mhm.
So that is some of the
Some of the
less
groundwork.
communicated
Yes.
improvements that have gone into that building and that space.
So
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick.
I think, and to reiterate, I think people just want to get hope. It's there, so I'll make sure that I highlight it. I think what I was asking for is when it's in the strategic report, it's not, like you said, people don't always go to that link, so having a one little paragraph, these are some of the bullets of what's happening. And if they even read that, that's an ask at times. But I think just to let folks know, we've got you've laid out a 6-year plan. And yet, we know that, but yet we don't always remember that. And so if we're probably more informed than many, they're probably even less informed, even though the information is there. So just, I think just reiterating as often as we can, this is what's going on. This is what we're planning on next steps, kind of thing.
If there's only 2 items that I put on the next agenda, it'll be resurfacing and, scope of work for the beach house.
Mr. Kendrick, I'd like to bring us back to this resolution with City Hall. Last year, we were informed that there was significant mold damage and there was an air quality issue. Does this take into that, figure out a way to fix that problem? Is it still a problem?
That was that building right there, and we remediated all of that. Oh, right, but we did do an air quality test over at that building. We did have some issues with some roof leakage and some wet insulation, but we did an air quality test, and it came back mold-free, and that it hasn't been an issue, and it won't be an issue there. So some of the things we're going to be doing over there is going to support not having that happen in the future.
Good, excellent, thank you.
So at City Hall, when the court clerk moves to whatever we're going to call that building, then that's going to be a domino effect of transitioning to shift where the acting city clerk moves, and part of the work is to do that, but also really remediate the roller coaster of the floor.
Yes. Among some other things we're going to do in there too. We got some plumbing issues that we need to address more, but there's a lot of flooring things that are going on.
So just that you know, this is more work in the last year since you've been here than I've probably seen in the 26 years I've lived here.
And I appreciate it. I really enjoy it. I mean, it keeps the mind going and those types of things, and I appreciate it.
That's also why we're in the position we're in of spending $200,000+ on repairs and maintenance, because it hasn't happened in the last 26 years. And bringing us into compliance with record keeping, having space for the staff that we have, having an office for our public works director, all of the things that go into that. And just a reminder that, council sets the priorities by the budget that we put forth, that we approve, the amendments that we approve. So just, if a priority is the public facility, the beach house, the clubhouse, if those are priorities, then the budget is what communicates that. So just keeping that in mind as we approve things.
And again, just a reminder, if we expect the best from our staff, we need to provide the support and the facilities for them to do that.
100%. Okay, is there a motion to approve resolution R 2025-41, or sorry, -40 for City Hall?
I proposed resolution R 2025 R40, the renovations to 425 All Good Road, City
Second.
Hall.
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, resolution R 2025-41, the restoration and facility improvements to the Public Works Building and the Pine Lake Clubhouse.
More of the same, just continued updates. We've got some rot and damage on the clubhouse that needs to be repaired. When we did do the roof, some of the overhangs got repaired in place, but we still have some other issues over there that we need to address. The flooring, we do have some rotting subfloors in the both the kitchen, which are visible, and that dressing room, and you know, by extension over to the restrooms, the flooring in there. Nothing has been updated in quite some time. It hinders, like you say, the rentability for Ms. Robinson, be able to get events in those spaces also. And of course, the Public Works Building, the doors, there's 2 doors over there that are broken. That, you know, we invested in new equipment. We're going to be moving some other equipment, the stage and other, you know, equipment that we utilize around the city. We're gonna be relocating that out of the firehouse over to that building. So we wanna make sure everything stays safe and secure and not walk off.
Okay, is there,
So the exterior painting, is that the clubhouse itself?
Both interior and exterior on the clubhouse.
Yay.
On the exterior, on the Public Works Building, and the doors and all those issues. We do have a little, on the back side, we have some issues with some of the siding that is, you know, rotting away. Those types of things need to be replaced.
Great.
Do you have restroom facilities in the Public Works Building?
Somewhere, no, we don't really need it. We just simply walk right across the road to the clubhouse, utilize it. You know, somebody did attempt to do a restroom there, but I don't know who, but I had the plumber come out to give me an estimate on it. It was astronomical, and one reason why it was somebody backfilled the sewer line. They abandoned it with concrete. I don't know where that happened. So it would have, you know, what would take, you know, digging another sewer line in order to, and a tap to the sewer.
Okay, I was
Like
just,
said,
if you don't feel it's necessary, I was
no,
just,
no,
I was
don't.
just wondering if you needed
No.
for
No, I mean,
potential employees or community service workers when they get here.
We
Um,
just, if we're working up there and need to utilize it or going to lunch, we right there at the clubhouse. Now we'll have this building.
Okay,
Come here, or if we're down at the beach, we just utilize the beach house. You know? As a matter of fact, you know, to keep other workers like the Georgia Power Crew, you know, we make sure that they have access so that they won't, you know, use the trees.
got it.
Mr. Kendrick, I have one quick question, and I'm looking at the facilities alarm monitoring services, and it talks about, that we just approved, that talks about full alarm coverage, control monitoring. Will there be cameras on the clubhouse?
Not on the clubhouse. The 4 buildings that we're gonna be monitoring be the Public Works Building, police downstairs, that building there, because she's gonna be, you know, pretty much alone, and she's gonna be taking funds, and City Hall.
My only concern is there's been vandalism to it before.
But here's the thing, with that camera, those cameras can be positioned to where you can see that building.
Fantastic.
Because right now, that's how the chief got a glimpse of who did the damage there, was through the camera that is over at Public Works now, because she repositioned it over there.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, is there a motion to approve resolution R 2025-41 for the restoration and facility improvements to 463 Clubhouse and 470 Clubhouse?
I move that we adopt resolution R 2025-41.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, new business, resolution R.
Can I say,
Yeah,
once again, really appreciate you guys having the trust in us to get these things done for you. It was no slight to, not prioritize the beach house, and I understand exactly what you're saying. And like I said, you got my commitment that on the work session, we'll have that right there in front of you guys, and we'll be able to move forward with that. Okay?
thank you,
And
Mr.
if you've got any suggestions, because you guys spend a lot more time in there than I do, feel free to, make me aware of those things, and then, we can have a more complete picture.
Okay.
So would you anticipate fall
Sir?
for starting on the beach house? Do you have a sense of time?
Well, once we look at what the scope of work is and how we, get with Ms. Robinson, surrounding, the rentals, and look back on historically, people have been renting it in July and August, and those types of things. If she hadn't seen those things, and I guess we'll get with the city manager, if we're comfortable that we can move forward in August or earlier that time, September, then I think we'll bring that back to you and request to move forward with that.
Just on that, I think we should wait until after Lake Fest to take that building offline for
Yeah.
any amount of time.
Yeah, we should probably also bring in to any discussion on use and need, the municipal arts panel, and Plain.
We can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Resolution R 2025-47. City manager, do you want to introduce this one?
Yeah, and in partnership with the city attorney. So there's a lot in our policies that we need to update. This is one that I asked the city attorney to make a priority, only because at any given time, there could be disciplinary issues that need to be addressed. And so in anticipation of that potential, I asked City Attorney Bach to make this a priority. And in effect, it just takes into account the changed form of government, so that if there is a disciplinary issue with an employee, that we're following the proper structure in accordance with the city charter. And I'll let the city attorney comment further.
There was a minor overhaul, and I use the word loosely, to your personnel policies in 2022. But by and large, the policy is as it existed when it was originally adopted in 2013, so it's hopelessly out of date. What we tried to accomplish with this minor change was to modernize the language and make sure that it was consistent throughout the various processes. We also wanted to make it consistent with the charter rewrite. The old policy was appropriate for a strong mayor form of government. It was not appropriate for a council manager form of government, so we needed to make that change a priority. We took out parts of the grievance procedure that were applying to discipline that don't need to apply to discipline. And all appeals, department heads are in charge of all discipline, and any appeals that happen go to the city manager. So it's consistent across your form of government, across your charter, and internally within its own terms.
Great, thank you. All right, let's have a motion to adopt in a second, and then we can open for discussion.
I motion that we adopt Resolution R 2025-47, proposed revisions to Pine Lake personnel policy.
Second,
I'll second.
any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, public comment.
Public?
Okay, seeing none, reports and other business, I have none. City council, any reports or
No.
other business? Okay,
I have
oh, okay,
And I'll have you write this up. This is a news blast go out.
yes.
yeah, okay, yeah.
They're gonna start working, taking down the fence at the tennis court, this weekend. And then that'll move into the, resurfacing beginning soon thereafter.
you.
Georgia Power, said they got about 6 more weeks in here.
Great.
Wow.
Of course, we'll let you know, we rescheduled the street sweeping and the curb bumping, but we'll continue to keep you updated on that.
Great, thank you. Any other information for the News Blast?
The Pride Lake fundraiser gala is Saturday,
Okay,
Um,
great.
6 o'clock. is when we open doors, and then 6:30 for the show.
Awesome.
Do we need to ask the owners of the skateboard ramp on the tennis court to remove it?
Public Works probably could.
Yeah, if you know who it is, yes, sir. Otherwise, it's gonna.
Probably, I
think we do.
I'm
think
not
we do.
asking-
I think we do.
I'm not asking you to incriminate yourself, Councilman Ramsey. I'm just saying, the choices are we either ask them to remove it if they want to keep
Or
it, or
it's
we're gonna
gone.
get destroyed.
Yeah. Okay.
Could put a wink wink in the e-blast. If that's your ramp, you might want to remove it in the night.
Seriously?
I think the
It
person.
depends on if we want to add humor.
chuckle.
Yeah.
I think the person who owns that ramp, if we can call it ownership after it being there for so long, probably doesn't read the News Blast.
Maybe their parents do.
Maybe their parents do. Right.
Okay, any other News Blast information? Public hearing, if it goes out before Thursday.
Not sure it will.
Okay.
Also
We
on
have that.
Thursday there's going to be a queer self-defense course in the Beach House at
Yep.
7.
That was in the last news blast.
Okay, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Just want to.
So if I can get it out by Thursday, which I,
Oh, that's right. This is for. Okay.
yeah, probably
Thank
not.
you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Like that gavel. Great, thank you, y'all.
Are you feeling better now? Fully recovered?
Still coughing.
Still. Well, stop.